Hello, hello.
Good morning. Morning. Uh, so yeah, yesterday was useful, right?
Yes.
A couple of thoughts, and I'm going to write them in a document, send it to Dini first, so she is involved, of course. And I'm just looking through some notes here from last night. So, number one, I think that our base unit of what is to be authored should not be a paper or an article, it should be a journal or a book.
Okay.
Part of this is I'm really excited by your poster note because
Yes.
it's very Brandel. I could imagine one of the views is you're standing inside like a column of posters. So you can look around, you can easily see things. These posters can be manually made by the author or computationally based on what's in the document, right? So I
Sure.
think that's quite phenomenal. So it's a 2D flat surface that becomes 3D by virtue of there being many. Yeah, so that's the first thing I want us to consider. Oh, you have your coffee yet, you bastard. I don't have mine.
Sorry, I didn't think that was triggering.
Of course, it's a trigger. Yeah, I had such a good coffee yesterday. I didn't drink over the weekend. I think it helped. Anyway, the second thing is the question of what should be authored in the headset and what should be brought in. We need to think about.
So actually, it might be something also same. Like I think we need not an ID dump, but we need something that is the equivalent of that. Namely, that okay, if we get excited by having a series of posters, we should not ignore it. At the same time, if we're productivity oriented for year two, so that we're not panicking in October when we have something to show and get evaluated by people, we don't we don't show them something exciting but off topic. And arguably, poster depends how it's done. But if it's designing the poster, then for sure we're on topic. If it's going through galleries of poster from a symposium or an event, then I would argue that we're off topic. So, but it doesn't mean the idea is not interesting to explore, but it's just like not something related to Sloan.
I think those are very important questions, and what I'm very grateful that I'm awake this morning before the alarm clock. Well, partly because Edgar jumped into bed. Emily and Edgar are going to be a bit slow today. It's a holiday. I mean, they're both working. But anyway, yeah, I woke up with great enthusiasm for this, and what you're saying now is exactly the issues we need to solve. The reading experience now, emotionally, we have solved. It is someone who is looking at one or more papers, do certain gestures, and they can toggle through views. We don't know what the heck that means yet, but we have a feeling of that. At least I do.
Mhm.
So when you go over to the authoring side, we need to develop something similar because obviously it cannot be everything is authored outside and brought in and
Yeah.
an editor does it. Of course not. So we have to decide what are the authoring points. Now, bizarrely enough, right now, I have author for the Vision Pro, but you also probably know that I don't use it. It's not up to date. The
Mhm.
reason for that is there is a bar at the top of the windows now that I computationally cannot get rid of. And
Mhm.
because the resolution in the Vision is good, but it's certainly not the same as a laptop or a desktop screen, it means that it provides so much literal headspace. It's like something like this in my field of view. It's
Mhm.
quite shocking. So I've asked the guys again now to see if there's an update to fix it. That means that unless someone has a very specific need, writing in XR, whether we build it or that, the resolution means it's just not compelling, right?
Mhm.
Now, sculpting, to go back a few meetings, to organize your knowledge or to think, that is very XR.
Yeah.
So that's partly why the the last room or step or whatever we call it, where you have those things in space, we should probably look more at that. excuse me, so that you imagine, let's say all the elements are authored outside, just for the sake of argument right now. Once you're in the headset, what you're authoring is placement for a really nice experience.
Mhm.
That might be a starting position, because of course you can type, but that should, it's just not that compelling. Like the timeline Mark talked about, maybe that can be a snap to timeline, but the author goes through and is like, no, that's not right. Does their edits and saves that rather than just a computational one. So there's that semi-automatic beginning. But then a
To me,
time,
those are like optional widgets. I'm not saying they were not interesting, but they were not core to authoring.
I agree. What is probably more core is the notion of layers that Ismail talked about, because I work with layers a lot in Author by using the special mark thing, which disappears on export but can be brought back as an example. There's a lot of talk in authoring about, and hang on, sorry, my brain is doing weird visualizations right now. I feel like I'm on acid. There's a lot of talk in hypertext about fluidity of what is presented. In a 2D world, we could easily imagine this as toggling between certain things being highlighted in a way or not. And when you interact with certain text, you get certain further resources available. That could be much more compelling in XR. For instance, you have the great selection system now. So I could imagine we could experiment with, if someone writes a glossary, and I think we need to redefine what glossary is. But let's say they read a sentence and they pull it out a little bit. What the user has authored for that can then, in a really cool way, come into view in 3D. So it is definitely part of, let's say it's a sentence of, you write something about 3D printing, and you don't expect the audience to know what 3D printing really is. Pull it out. If you've written something in the glossary, in on the side, 3D letters appear, maybe with an image, in the way that the author has put it in some sort of a visual glossary. As in, more interacting with the actual text. Oh my God, what we could even do, imagine this. You have this PDF looking thing in front of you where the white, okay, you do a specific action that is away, so you push away. And what happens is you don't push the PDF away because it's not a PDF. When you do that, first of all, the white becomes transparent and some of the text becomes 3D extruded because it has further information available. So you can easily see that. And maybe maybe if you do a gesture to the side, and this is based on you and the system knowing what that mean, what the dimensions mean, you pull names out to the side, references out to the side, whatever it is from that, because it's been authored that way.
So what here? So yes, all that is feasible. Namely, we can extrude text, and we can have pushing, let's say, transparent, opaque background to become transparent. So none of that is a problem. What's more interesting, in my opinion, here is that that's an example of a composable gesture, namely that you store the gesture and you don't stop it and you transition to another one. So by pushing, you've done a selection action basically. And then by moving to the side, you're applying a function or something else to it. And for example, that's one, maybe rotating is another. But I don't know how, maybe you can do it the other way also, like selecting and rotating and then pull. But I think to me, that's kind of more it's not the gesture per se with the action linked to it per se, even though that is still interesting, but it's more like, are those easy to learn and composable gestures, so that we do have again a grammar of gesture, not just like that linked series of gestures.
I think that's an important question, but I don't think we need to worry about it yet. I think we need to look at, would it be, first of all, cool? Secondly, would it be useful? If so, then we spend time to get the right gesture. So this is the cleaned up version. This is live and real, right? This is what I'm writing here. If I now go to outline, it properly is in columns now, which is really quite special. It's much more scannable. And let me do it on my journal. So here, if it only shows, say there's a rendering issue. If it only shows highlighted text in my journal, that's not very useful. But if I then do names, they appear here. This is really crazy cool, because now I can skim through and very easily see, oh, well, I was talking about Jeff Rulifson. Okay, right, that kind of stuff. And of course it crashes because that's a test version. But what I'm saying is, the thing we were talking about now, while you are authoring, let's remember that, not just for the reader. If you have a way of having a column of text in front of you and being able to pull categories to the side. I mean, one thing that would actually be useful, and it's slightly a gimmick, but also useful, is imagine you have this column. This is your authoring. This is your word processor view, right? And you do, quite simply, flat hand, boom. Now all the headings are moved to the side, like I just showed you. It shows a fluidity of working that you don't have really anywhere else. And now imagine you do your right hand, and you pull to the right, and it'll pull whatever you did last. Let's say it's all the names, like you just saw. But if you pull, and if you put your hand and then you pull it up, then you get a series of options, names, citations, whatever. And you see them kind of popping off the page a little bit. And once you have the one you want, then you pull it out. And once you've done that to the references, let's say, you have a column of reference on the side now. They should appear in a very useful way. And if you now imagine you have another command, which is this, like a pinch, whatever column your hand is right in front of, you do this, that column just disappears, or you push it back. You know, we test. So you can actually end up with reading your own document that you're authoring, doing this pull up to the side, references, go back, close the main view. So now you just have your references, and you can choose how to view them, because that is really key for XR.
To play a bit devil's advocate, I feel like a lot of that, as you've demonstrated, actually works quite well in 2D on a normal screen.
You are wrong, my friend. No, of course you're right. I'm very lucky because I get to straddle both worlds and play 2D and author, which has certain benefits. But what I'm talking about here is the use of interactions and space, right? Because I imagine these as being quite tall columns, right? And it feels okay. Let's just for the sake of argument, please mirror my motions, okay? Pretend you have quite a tall column of text in front of you, so it's not necessarily all readable, but it's really massive. So you take your hand out, and then to the left, to your left. That's the headings, easy, right? That's just whether you want headings or not. And you can also do this towards the headings and move them back into the document, and then they are no longer on the side, right? Now, do this last one. Hold your hand and then lift up, And now imagine that all the names are slightly pulled towards you, but you don't want the names. And then you move it up and down like a rocker, and you get to whatever point, all the citations, and you pull them to the side. You may pull them really far to the side. So you can end up with having all these columns of text really close together or really far apart. For the record, I didn't think of any of this until we started talking. The border with can it be done in 2D will never be broken, I think, because all of this can be flattened because text is flat, right? How you choose to put the elements in space is 3D. Other knowledge can be in multiple spaces, but text, I think, will always be flat. So I share your concern, emotional concern. If we have such a method of working, we can extend it to include things like, this thing you pull up to see things. Maybe one of them is pictures or, images or whatever. But let's say you don't want to see them because they take too much space. You actually push away and then they shrink to nothing. So, you choose what is in your main body. And also, you should probably have some storage mechanism for pictures you have added but you haven't used yet. That might very well be at the back of the document, for instance. Another thing, of course, would be the defined concepts. So if you do that again, a rocker, and you pull it towards you, I can imagine even doing this on a train or a plane, because you don't have to go crazy with your hands. You just lift them up and you do this. So you pull them out, and if it is the defined concepts, they are now on a knowledge map, so you can move them about. So then we can start experimenting with where should they be in the space. Should they be in front of the document? Should they be behind or on the side? If it's not clear, how do we move them front and back? How do we select them?
So again, to play devil's advocate, to try to simplify, I think a lot of those are functionally equivalent to picking it and pushing it away. Because then you still you're freely moving the thing in space. It could also be a set of them. So for example, if you do this, you select a heading, you could select all headings, not just one. And then when you do this, you move to the left and then it moves them there. We remove the rest of the text away. Because I've noticed that teaching gestures to people, it's a bit different, I guess, right now, because we're giving demo to people. Like they don't expect when we leave to keep on using the thing. They might not even have a headset. So I think they're not really involved to the point of learning gestures. And I guess even unlearning some of the gestures they use in other experiences. What might be interesting though, and I think we haven't explored that, and I don't really know how to do it easily, but it's having like a kind of ghost gesture. For example, if you have this column of text and you want to push to the side something, is to have a virtual 3D hand that is like half transparent, that is not yours, and then you basically put your hand there and it does the gesture for you. You have to mimic it basically. But again, it's still teaching people gestures. And I don't know if that's what we want to do. Do we want them to learn gestures, or does having, again, just pinching? I'm just saying pinching because that's what we have right now. So I know that's reliable.
Okay. I don't. Okay. I think we should do this. I'm being the other devil's advocate because pinching is really nice, but to be weird, when you pinch like this, it's also a very feminine thing. You know,
Okay.
so if, no, look, if you look at my hand, right? If you
Yeah.
pinch just there, but it's like holding a teacup. It's like, oh, very dainty, right? So I don't
I
mind
drink
pinching.
tea. I don't find this
No, no,
familiar.
but hang on. There's more to this, okay?
Yeah.
When you pinch a thing, that's totally, that makes sense. That's a kind of a neutral thing. But to pinch in space, you know, let's say if that's where we're, because that's one thing you could do, just like you do that the palm in space, you could do the pinch in space. That to me feels a bit like weak in a weird sense, right?
Yeah.
So first of all, I don't mind teaching people some gestures at all, because as long as it's not overwhelming for a demo period, you know, hang on, we are polarizing each other on purpose here, right? If we really go in and say, you know, when you have your text in front of you, your palm going this and that direction means that, right? Because we're not talking about that much. We're basically talking pull, and then elements come up, and you go up and down. You can see different elements are now activated, and you pull them to the side. That's it. And you can
Mhm.
push away. But that is not the key. That can be tested and argued and discussed and looked at.
If another way, I guess, to discuss this is one of the things to me that worked in terms of wow effect of people trying is dropping on panels. So when you release and then it goes to the panel in front of you. So it's arguably that's a continuation of a gesture. Namely, you start to pinch and move the thing because the pinching and move, it's one to one. Like it doesn't move along a restricted axis. You don't have to think. Namely, if you take the object and you move it, it's there and it's there. There is no, it's
Okay,
one on
right.
one.
Okay,
Uh,
Fabien, this is a very useful discussion. Let's pretend I'm wrong. Just kidding.
mhm.
No, let's do that and just say we're not going to do any of that palm stuff. You said one to one. I like that. So instead of this and you have a rocker to choose thing on your thing, let's imagine that if you choose a person's name, and if you lift it a little bit, that might be a copy action or whatever. But if you lift it sufficiently, you're into this mode.
Mhm.
If you lift a citation, you're into this mode. If you lift a heading, you're into this mode.
Yes. This we can do.
Lift a heading, throw it to the side. You have all the headings to the side. You can
So
click on them and they will jump on the in the main.
yes. What I meant to say earlier is that I think what it was the wow effect for people with the dropping on the panel was that the continuation of the gesture made them feel more efficient.
Yeah.
Namely, when they realize the thing, instead of going all the way to the panel, it went there. So I think here it could be the same, namely that you start to pull the item, being citation or being heading or whatever, and then you start to move it to the left. But when you release, instead of leaving there on the left, it goes further to the left with the other citation. So I think I'm wondering if the wow effect comes from continuation of gestures. Like you stored them and they were not gestures you need to learn. You're like moving things one to one as you've done the entire time and as you do in real life anyway. So there is no, arguably, pretty much nothing to learn there. But the continuation itself is like, oh, that's what I meant to do. And instead of having to be like so tedious, I put it there, then it continues it for you.
So my interpretation of that, and I think I very strongly agree with you. You have your column here, and you pull a heading sufficiently far that it's lifted and it's clear.
Mhm.
Something changes, you know it's not just a snapback. You move it to the left or right, wherever it is,
Yeah.
and a wireframe appears of another column next to the body of text. You let go and it glues onto that.
Mhm.
That wireframe now, depending on interactions, maybe it's a wrist thing, you can see the frame of, so you can actually move it wherever you want in space
Mhm.
with that stuff. But by default, you have body text, heading, references, or names, or, so these panels, by dragging something into it, it becomes defined. That is what that is for. You drag one citation into a panel, that whole panel becomes citations.
Mm-hmm.
This can probably also be extracted to doing cool things like dragging a bit of text you don't know what to do with. So you drag it over to a panel, it becomes your scrap area.
Mm-hmm. So I think that means basically the intersection of the set of affordances. So you have your document in front of you as the column, and you have parts of it, say heading, say citation, figures, whatever. And then you have panels to the side. And then some panels have some kind of affordances too, namely being dropped on for citations or for images or whatnot. And then when you start the gesture, because it's here an image and here it's a panel for citation, that say nothing happens. But if you drop on another one and it has the affordance for images, for this, let's say, type of content, then the continuation would be like, I don't know, displayed as a grid or put it without any change, or I don't know what. But yeah, the intersection of both of set of affordances based on the types, I guess.
Let me say this back to you. Please listen very carefully, because I think we may have a small difference of perspective. You lift to a certain space names, a name.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have it at a certain altitude, maybe it underneath it literally says you are holding a name. Obviously not with words, some kind of graphic or whatever, right?
Yeah.
If you now move it to the side over an empty panel that has now suddenly become visible and let go, it snaps to that. And all other names appear on there.
Mm-hmm.
If you lift it and then you place it on an empty panel, basically touching it, then you only put that single name there. Then it becomes a scratch space.
What? How does one distinguish between the two? I didn't get.
I am not sure, but we know that we want to have one mechanism whereby a column is all the references, all the names, blah, blah. It is owned by that category. We also want to have scratch spaces where you take a little bit of text and an image or whatever, right? So what I said now isn't necessarily correct at all, but we need a way to differentiate. So it might be that
I think maybe if we do like a long release, let's say if you release right away on that panel, then it's the one entity. And if you hold it longer, let's say a second or two, then it expands from that entity to all other entities of the same type. And if you pull it back without releasing it there, it becomes one again.
sorry, I just got a message from, hang on. We have an issue with the outline, just 1 second. In a meeting now, so cannot. Okay, boom, sorry about that. Yeah, that's one option, but your magnetic panels, I think, are very powerful. So maybe we have a different kind of panel for this. Maybe what we do, we could do something like you lift it and then you do it really high up. So then it snaps to, it's a newly created panel that is above you. But it has a grab bar, so you can put it anywhere afterwards. But it means that this, the location means something. Maybe.
Okay, so what we can have is we can have an intermediary panel in the middle, like something that is nearly all transparent. And when so you have the panels around you, you have this bit of text you took. If you put it if you put it on the panel or in direction of a panel and you release, it's going to drop on there. But if you go through that semi-transparent panel that is somewhere in front of you,
I gotta answer the door. Fabien, hang on just 1 second. I'll just mute the audio because it'll be sorry, it was our cleaner. Whoops.
No worries. So yes, that if you pick an item from a column of text, you would have basically a zone that is not in front of you because that would be too, how do you say, too much, let's say, too noisy, but slightly on the side. And if you go through, then it extends from the current item to all items from that category. But I don't know if it, yeah, anyway. Or something like this could also be something like this. You have like a ring much bigger than this, like bigger than your hand, basically. And if you go through that ring, then it transforms one item to all items of that type.
Yeah. Okay. What about what about the opposite? So we've made an assumption now that the writing area will be within reach, even if you have to lean forward a little bit, right? Like a display monitor would be. And we've decided that, at least for now, if you pull something out, we get the interactions we just discussed for categories. What if
Well, I mean, it's what we have with the highlights.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's where it comes from. That's what I like. You know, you pull it out like that, and you move it to the side, and it'll snap to the nearest empty, invisible panel. But if we want to, so the question now is what to do with scrap space, right? Like a cuttings area. What about the opposite? You select it, and then you push through. And when you do that, the main area becomes transparent. And yeah, the point is, where should it appear? Where would you want to see it?
To me, well, we'll try, but I think having a ring with a text on it, and you go through, and the text would say like, what is the name of that action? It's like threading a needle, like you have your string and you go through when you crochet or whatever. It makes sense, and you have the name of the thing, like on the ring itself, you have like what it does. Let's say expand selection or reduce selection or clone or whatever you want. I think that's. I haven't tried it, so I'm just speculating. But I think in terms of being composable without having to be taught much, it might be a good compromise. I don't want to fight over this in the sense of, oh, is this better than other gesture? Just like I thought about it right now, and I'm pretty convinced, but it's nothing more than that.
Yeah, I mean, things like that are cool. Can you explain a little further how that circle would work? What I may have misunderstood.
Um, so I'll do a demo because I'm rather sure I can do this very quickly. But imagine and the demo can be very simple. So you grab an item, and then you have a big disk, or actually it will be a sphere because that's easier for me. And if it's let's say pink or fuchsia, or I don't know what. I see 5 colors. And when you pull through, so it's hard to do with 2 hands, but this one is floating in space right now,
Oh,
and
I
I
get it.
pull that through, and it becomes pink, and that's it. And instead of being changing color, it's like, oh, you have a heading, and then you get all heading or
Let,
whatever
let,
transformation you did on that element.
let me see if I get it. So basically, you pull out, and now you have, depending on what thing you drop it onto that suddenly appeared. Let's say the thing that appears is a plus around it, for the sake of logic. I don't mind your spheres. If you pull it to the right, it can mean create new column for this category. If you pull it up, it could mean add this to scrapbook. If you pull it then down into a sphere, it could mean look it up on the internet. You pull it left, it can mean do an AI just to annoy you. Just kidding. But the point is you pull it out and then you have some targets right around your hand you can drop it onto. That could be a very cool interaction because the only thing you need to teach the user is pull it up and you basically have a context menu. But it's not a boring list, it's a circle. So after a while of usage, you know that you pull out and you go to the right and let go, it does a certain thing, pull out to the left, it does another thing. That could be really cool.
Yeah, it's basically the same element of interactions. Instead of being in an absolute position in space, they are, let's say, if that's a list of text and then you pull through, it will be like 5 centimeters backward from, or 5 centimeters between that text and you, let's say on that line. But I think those, let's say, sphere or disk or torus might, yeah, would have names on them. This way you don't need to tell that, oh, it's to the right, to the left. It might be over time that they remember it if it's always in the same position, but yeah, it
So
doesn't have to. But it's still like pulling a needle through, let's say, rings, because you can then stack them. You can have multiple of them.
So this is what I think we have, and I'm excited by this. So in my current world, select text or keyboard shortcut, it gets lifted into this liquid thing and you have further options, right? What I'm thinking that we're developing here, based on, well, basically 100% what you said, is you select text and then you do an act. Now the act is pull it towards you. That's functionally equivalent to keyboard shortcut to lift it into liquid. Now you have further options.
Mm-hmm.
How those options are displayed at this point doesn't really matter, but over time you should be able to do a lift and pull in a specific way to execute that option.
Yes.
So,
So I'll do a demo.
but hang on, let's just, this is really exciting, Fabien, because I think we've truly developed something together. Select whatever, pull it out,
Yeah.
and for the sake of our demo, maybe move it up and it does a Google search, leaving WebXR, but out and up means search for it. Hey, you don't have to implement that, but you know what I mean, right? It could do a
Yeah.
search because out and up is nice. Like you throw it up, what is there? Out and down is copy because you want to keep it, put it on your table. Out and to the side is the make a new column for it if one doesn't exist, something like that.
Okay. Um,
You have to go, as do I,
yeah, but I think
preempting you there.
let me, um, you have this text. You pull the text one line away from it. Out of it, you have let's say 4 discs much bigger than this, let's say 10 centimeter radius, because you can pull your hand through. You have those options, let's say on top, Google search, left, right, bottom, other options, let's say put in bold or change color, whatnot. So you pull through one of those, let's say put in change color, because again, that's easier for me to implement, but can be any function applied to that text. It doesn't matter. Can even be indeed AI reformulation or whatever you want. But I think what's interesting is you don't have to stop there. Let's say if here you did bold, maybe you have other options, which is like unbold or italic or whatnot, or still Google search. And then you can keep on pulling through another circle. And what might happen is those circles you've been through, they stack forward, because otherwise you can't like keep on pulling forever.
You're making a hierarchical menu of balls.
Yes.
I think that is a very, very good idea.
And I think because I think it really enables a lot, because here, though, if you stack them back, you can also, if you push backward, you can cancel the last action. You can like thread back again and then pull through another one. So yeah, I think it's fun even. I don't know if it's efficient, but I feel like, oh, you grab a text and you like kind of pull through a bunch of different transformations.
Yeah, I think this is really brilliant. This is wow.
Hopefully.
No, it is. If it's going to be our only wow, I don't know, but this is definitely wow. So the way, okay, let me do a virtual demo of this. I'm talking to my friend who's put on the headset, gone through a few things, so they're familiar with the environment. They feel comfortable. They say, okay, you got in front of you what looks like a very standard. Let's not talk about PDF now, because we're talking about authoring. So you have your word processor window in front of you, saying it in the driest possible way. And pick a word there, like the word web. Fine. Yeah, pinch and select it. Okay, done it. Now drag it towards you, about 10 centimeters. Oh, I have these spheres around it with options. And I say, yeah, this is basically a context menu. And one of them is format, just to extend what you said, Fabien. Pull it to whatever side, and then once you're there, oh my God, I can make it bold. Cool. I go there and it's bold. So, and then after a while, once you and now I'm back not talking to the demo person, you and me in the community have decided on what functions need to be there. Look at this. It's like painting. Changing gears.
I think if you've done it a couple of times, it can be fast, because you'll remember basically that kind of movement or gesture that you've been through those literal hoops before, and thus you can do it faster. So I think in terms of discoverability for newcomers, like I can think of even a kid being able to do that, to go through, assuming even if they don't read, because you can do colors, for example, of those. So I think there might be something to explore. And why do I think it's probably or definitely worthwhile to explore for us right now is because it is a form of authoring. Because transforming text basically is that we might have to still think about other inputs, but I think in transforming what we have, there might be something.
Yeah, it's very cool. And we can go into more things in the future, which is something we have to discuss, such as you do a thing and the choice is link it to the next thing I touch. So if you have a reference item in space, you now touch that, and then you get a shiny line for a second connecting them, and now that text has become a reference.
Not to pull away from this, but I'm thinking also as you pull through those different hoops, they are again they're stacked back so that you can pull through if you want to cancel the last action. But then it means if you have a stack of hoops, you can also save that set of transformation. If you, for example,
macros.
Say, let's say macros. But if it's like bold and then green and then italic, then you pull those stacked, you release and then you put that into your manuscript, let's say, page. But then you can pull those stacked disks, those 3 disks, put them there on the side of the document. Instead of redoing that movement, you go through those 3 stacked hoops. Why are you smiling?
It's no, because it's perfect. This is exactly the kind of thinking we need. No, this is very, very good. Yes, this is very good. Now, there will be times when you want to do a global thing when you're writing. Maybe now on our wrists, for a second, let's forget what we have. Maybe you have a pull out from your wrist and you get a series of options that are global. For instance, hide everything but the main window or whatever, right?
Right. So you'll think I'm again a bit obsessed or or single focused there, but you pick a line from the text and then you make it through those hoops. But you could take the whole text. It doesn't have the same way we were discussing earlier about, you take a piece of text and then expand through all those items of the same types. It doesn't have to be a modification applied to a single item. It is, because that's
No,
what
I agree with you. But like, let's say you want to change the background color of the room, let's say, something that is unrelated to the text.
But you can say the room itself is such an item, like a selector, and then you say, if it's changed text color to green, it could be like room color in green. So it's the same principle.
Yeah, I mean, so let's look at this. If I now do this, it'll do the action on, it'll do the AI on the selected text. If I don't select anything, right?
Yeah.
If I don't, it'll do it on the whole text. So that's equivalent. So I think what you're talking about is if you pull on a non-text area on white background, then it's a global action you're initiating, right?
Well, could be. The empty thing kind of. I prefer if we can have, for example, a mini 3D version of the room, and then we pull it through, like let's say a mini sphere or a mini table or whatnot, like literally dollhouse kind of thing, because it's 100% coherent. It's more like, instead of having that global object of the room, we make it virtually tangible, and we apply exactly the same affordances, namely apply modification by grabbing it and pulling it through. So that would be my suggestion to. It's every time.
I don't mind that.
Good.
Okay, so yeah. Yeah, this whole notion, I think you're onto something very strong. So I think we've decided we have the pull through multiple notion as something to build a grammar from, because it's almost like you're doing Chinese characters, Japanese characters, boom, 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 right? Some of them could be actually really complicated if it's something you don't do often. And as you said, you could then leave that as a macro and save that in a specific location. And the other thing we have is one of them means pull it across into a column.
The macro themselves are composable too, namely that if you pull through, let's say, the yellow disk, I say color because it's easier to visualize, and then you pull back through, let's say, green, italic, and bold. Or here it doesn't, so it would have to be, let's say, underline, and then green, italic, and bold. So if you pull through a single disk and then through the macro, that can still becomes like 4 disks, and that becomes also usable. So the macro themselves can be reused through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's brilliant. I look at it like those mints, polo mints or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But I'm also thinking, what about this? You pull out something and you have this system, which is great. But if you pull out and just look at my hand,
Yeah, I see your hands. Don't worry, it's a big screen.
I don't know. Yeah, no, I know you're paying attention. It's just where the monitors are. Yes.
It's
You
huge.
pull it out, and let's say you twist and you hold for a second, then it becomes macro mode,
Yeah.
right? So just something
Um,
different that wouldn't be done by accident. However, imagine the wow factor. The user does a few things like that. So, okay, fine. That was a bit complicated, wasn't it? Now, do the same action, but don't let go. Do a twist for a second, and then see what happens.
Two things. Yes, that would be, let's say, not by, I mean, it would be by default, but it's more like for power user, basically. Like
Yes.
if you have, again, you give a demo to a kid, they pull through hoops. I'm like 99%, they get it. And I think they pull through the first hoop, and then the rest they get right away.
Yeah.
But to do this, let's say, I think there is indeed something there to go. What might be interesting is, for example, because I'm afraid if you start to have to go through a literal dozen of hoops, maybe it's a bit much, even despite macros. But I think again that will probably work well. But you can imagine that if you have, let's say, the disk, here it's a color, for example, and it's like continuous values, then you could pull on the disk to make it rotate. And then the disk is, I don't know the name, but they have like disk where you have portion selector on it.
Okay, I get it.
Um,
Let me say it back to you. I gotta say it back to you. So one of them, you're going through do, and you're now at font size,
yeah.
right? And then you can now rotate for the font size,
Yes.
or up and down, or whatever it is. But you then have the continuous motion. Yeah, this is very good.
Because otherwise I'm afraid that if you have a couple of things like bold italic and all, it scales because it doesn't have to really scale. But if you have indeed like font size, that's a good example. Or colors also, it's like so many options. If you have hundreds of hoops, it's too much. But if you have a couple and you can like preset the value also, I think that's yeah, same. I think that would work quite well.
So we now have one hand. We need to use both hands.
We don't.
No, 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 not always, not often, but we shouldn't ignore the second
Right.
hand,
Yeah, I agree.
right?
I'm just saying, sorry, I interrupted you a bit sharply there because I'm thinking also of in terms of accessibility. It's not everybody has two hands, and you might want to use it for other things. But yeah, sorry.
No, I agree with that, but then not everybody. Look, yeah, I have friends with only one hand, so yeah, definitely. But the system should be built to use as much as the human body as possible, in not to make it complicated, but to make it flexible.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of have an extra option now.
Can we not? Can we, for now? I think there is enough to technically and intellectually explore without piling on top of it.
We don't have to do building, nothing about that. It's purely an observation along, we have these options and we still have the rest of the body. All we care about now is the magical thing here. And there's going to be a lot of issues with that already. But
No doubt.
the things I really want to see, a copy or save thing, which doesn't necessarily have a visual result right now. I also really want to see pull, and I think we should reserve the horizontal at the first level to go to the columns because it's really powerful. But anyway, we can keep redefining what the axes do, right? And then we can have something less used to be. I mean, we do have 6 axes here that are usable. 45-degree. As long as you can do it far enough, for it to take effect. I don't think it's that controversial or that hard. But if it's only a little bit, then of course, did you really go up or to the side? Become something else. Anyway, this is fantastic.
I think there is just. I don't want to be rude by saying, "Hey, let's not think further." I'm just
I know
a
for
little
you
bit
it's stressful because you have to look at the repercussions. I absolutely
yes,
understand that.
and I think there it's uh, that's why I'm being so annoying with like, oh, is it just a cool gesture or does it open to a lot more? Is because once it does open to a lot more, then yeah, It's like what is beyond what we have imagined so far. Whereas if we do a single gesture and we have the wow, but it's still like a single gesture, it's easier to predict what's next. And here right now, I'm like, I don't really know what's next because I think there are quite a few things we haven't thought of yet, and we would probably imagine it with better quality by doing the thing. So
Yeah. No, this is absolutely a case that we got to try it to get it. I got to go make some coffee for someone. Not me. I mean, yes,
we
I
can have
will do
you.
that later. This was very fruitful. I will put this up as a devlog.
Yeah.
And this one, well, should we make this one have the video available?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, because this one was, yeah, very, very useful. Tomorrow I leave the flight somewhere around 12, so we're leaving here at 9 in the morning. If you have time today to talk more, and if you want to, that would be great. Other than that, we have Slack.
Yeah.
And this was fun and productive. It's funny how things fall out of other things. All right, bye for now.
Take care. Chat with you